Jody. Okay, I call to order this meeting of the Architectural Review Board. Roll call, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Jody Gerhardt, Manager of Current Planning. We have Chair Firth is absent this morning, so we have Vice Chair Balte acting as the chair. Chair Balte?
Present.
Board Member Thompson?
Present.
Board Member Guyer?
Here.
Board Member Liu?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is oral communications for any member of the public who would like to address something that's not on the agenda. Having no speaker cards, we'll move on to the next item, which is agenda changes, deletion, and additions. I would like for us to postpone the review of the board minutes because I want to wait till we have a full board, and I don't think we've received the minutes yet anyway. And then I'd like to announce that I will be recusing myself from 429 University, and Alex Liu will take over as chair at that point. Next item is official city reports. Do we have any questions or concerns? Then moving right along, we're going to address study session item 656 and 649 Lytton Avenue, request for preliminary architectural review of proposed revisions to the facade of an existing multifamily affordable senior housing facility and other minor site revisions. Environmental assessment is that this is not a project, and the formal application will be subject to California Environmental Quality Act review. Staff report, please.
Good morning, board members. The project before you today is a project at 649 and 656 Lytton Avenue. And the site consists of 4 parcels with 2 existing structures, Lytton Gardens 1 and Lytton Gardens 2, which are both planned communities with senior affordable housing. And a quick overview of the project. The application before you today is a preliminary architectural review application to assess modifications to the existing Lytton Gardens 1 and Lytton Gardens 2 facilities. And I'll provide a little bit more detail about these in a moment, but generally the modifications include changes to the material in both buildings from wood shingles to fiber cement board, a through-wall heating and air conditioning units in Lytton Gardens 1 facilities or units, parking modifications, minor landscape modifications, and some exterior lighting. The existing material is a wood shingle. The applicant notes that for maintenance, combustibility, and durability reasons, they are proposing to replace the existing wood siding with fiber cement lap siding. And the materials board that's in front of you includes a sample of the new materials proposed. At the Lytton Gardens 1 facility, the applicant is proposing new package terminal through-wall air conditioning heating units, and the units on the outside would be painted to match the wall on which it's located. In the below-grade parking garage at Lytton Gardens 1, the parking would be modified to create 3 new ADA-compliant spaces from 5 existing standard spaces. And this would result in 2 fewer spaces than currently exist. At grade, they would remove 2 existing non-compliant ADA parking spaces that block a portion of the drop-off pickup zone. And landscape and lighting modifications. They would generally revise the walkway configuration and add benches and bicycle parking at the corner of, I think it's University and Middlefield. And some of the exterior lighting would also be replaced. So some key considerations from you guys today, just your thoughts on the proposed material changes and material quality, consistency with the downtown design guidelines, and thoughts on the parking modifications. We ask that board members provide initial feedback to the applicant. No formal recommendation is needed at this time. And following the hearing, the applicant may elect to file a formal application for architectural review. Thank you so much.
Do we have the applicant here? So they're going to get 10 minutes, so give them a 10-minute button. Good morning. If you could state and spell your name for the record, please. You have 10 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Glenn Wood, GLENNWOOD, with SGPA Architects.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, board members. I'm here to represent the applicant for the Litton Gardens project, which consists of 2 buildings, a larger affordable senior building and a market rate senior building. And I'm going to keep my presentation pretty short here because I know you've looked at the packet and read the staff report. But I would like to point out that we've made a few changes to some of the visuals and things from what's in your packet. So if you guys could follow along on the screen a little bit as I go. There's a few minor or a few changes in some of the visuals. The primary modifications we're making is to upgrade the siding on the entire building from the cedar shakes to a fiber cement horizontal board. And we've tried to work a little more on the visuals to make them a little more realistic, because there are a lot of trees and there's a lot of landscaping around these buildings, and we wanted to try to let you visualize it kind of in a little bit more context from what was in your original packet. We're also upgrading, making some modifications around the pickup drop-off area and some of the interior courtyards, and upgrading the landscaping and modernizing it. And the applicant's main goals for this is to visually enhance the entire building and upgrade it, but also to keep the building properly maintained and to choose materials that are easy to maintain. And the applicant does have concerns about the combustibility of the cedar shakes, especially considering that it's a senior population living here. They also have maintenance concerns and sustainability concerns on the existing wood shakes. I have a team here, including the landscape architect, who she'll come and do a really brief presentation right after me of a little more details on the landscaping. I have Joanne from SGPA, who knows a little more about the background of the project, and I have Kareem and Doris, the applicants. They can answer questions about the history of the building and the background of changes that have been made in the past, if you have questions about that. So what I wanted to do here, just to kind of finish my presentation, was actually to just show you some of these visuals that we've been working on, just to try to help you to see what some of the changes are going to look like. Let me apologize, I have to flip through some slides here to get to it. So this is what the current conditions look like. The proposed elevations, as you have already in your packet. And then here at the end, we spent some time to show how the building, a little more realistically, how the building fits into the existing trees and landscaping on this sheet. And then let me move forward. This one, we worked hard on upgrading this visual to show the drop-off area, how that will appear with the upgraded landscaping and the improvements that we're making there. Here's another view of the pickup drop-off area with the improvements shown. And we have these updated visuals of the courtyard area showing the landscape, which Jackie will go into more detail with. So I think I'll just leave it there and let Jackie come up and talk a little bit more about the landscape. We have some physical samples of the fiber cement board if you'd like to see that also. Yeah, you got that. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, and I'll be here for any questions that you might have for me. Thank you.
Okay, you have 10 minutes total, so please come to the microphone.
Sorry.
If you could state and spell your name for the record,
Yes.
please.
My name is Jackie Keller with Keller Mitchell, Jacque. Keller is Keller. Okay. Let's see here. We were brought on the job they really wanted to save water. And we looked at areas that didn't make sense from lawn. They have a lot of lawn right now. So what we're trying to do is on the street sides, put in a lot of drought-resistant lawn, or drought-resistant plant material. The other thing we were really cognizant of is there are so many trees that we saved as many trees as we could. There are a few trees that we had to remove that were ailing or didn't make sense from an ADA standpoint. We had to widen some of the walkways. And we did give a few more, we gave some, let's see here. I don't know how. We, as you can see on the left-hand side, we created a central space so that we could have some more dining for the seniors. We removed the fountain and relocated it because it was in a strange spot. Again, we kept most of the trees in that central courtyard. We did remove a few. And we're just refreshing the landscape with drought-resistant plant material. We used permeable paving wherever we could so that we could reduce the runoff. And we created this drop-off area so that it was safer, and yet it was a challenge because we had to keep the existing redwood trees. Wherever we have redwood trees, we decided to remove the lawn and add in mulch in lieu of the lawn. So we tried to remove the lawn as much as we could where it made sense. In the central area, we have a little bit of lawn, but seniors do not use lawn the way children do. So, if you have any questions, I'm certainly here to answer them.
Thank you. If that's the conclusion of the applicant's presentation, do we have any members of the public who would like to address this project?
One more.
Oh, absolutely. Please continue.
Apologize. I didn't mention the wall units, and I had heard that was a question that the board had, and the applicant is proposing the wall units because it's in an existing building. It's very difficult to retrofit it with a full AC and heating system with ducts and everything like that. And the wall units are very energy efficient and less expensive. And the current building does not adequately have adequate heating, and it has no air conditioning, and this would provide both heating and air conditioning to the units in a very sustainable and cost-effective and low-energy way. But I think that was the last item that I thought I could address, and we'd love to hear your comments and see if you have any questions for us. So thank you very much.
Do we have any members of the public who would like to address this project? I see no speaker cards. Very well then, does anybody have any questions? Robert, you were asking earlier.
Yeah, I think it was answered, but is either one of these two facilities state licensed, as in OSHPD, that sort of thing? Because it's a medical facility?
Could you please
Okay,
come?
that's fine.
Perhaps the applicant can come to the microphone and answer that question.
Yeah. Kareem, the applicant, he could probably answer these.
If you could please state your name and spell it for the record.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. My name is Kareem Sultan, Karim Sultan. I'm the Vice President of Affordable Housing for Covia.
Thank you.
Welcome. So our building is not licensed for OSHPD. The Lytton 2 facility is licensed RCFE as an assisted living facility, half of the building, but not as OSHPD.
Okay, that's fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Anybody else? Osma?
I have a question about the fiber cement panels. So we have 3 samples here, and then we have some colors. Are we to assume that these are not the actual color and that this is painted on the fiber cement?
Yeah, I mean, I have a second copy here. We have submitted a color board that shows the actual colors we're proposing. Oh, you have it there.
No, we have that up here.
Sorry, yeah,
We
we
have
have a copy. It was just a question on these physical samples, that these are not actually the color. We
Yeah,
should
that's-
imagine this material with these colors.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yes.
And I have one question for, I don't know who the applicant, I guess, but I've been aware of this building and living with it. I work very close by. It seems to me there's fairly new cedar shingles on the building just now. Can somebody address what the history of that is?
So yes, there were shingles done in 2014. So those are about the earliest that have been done. So there were some shingles done a couple of years before that, and the most recent was about 4 years ago.
But I remember just within 6 months or a year seeing scaffolding and men working on shingling. Could it be that the project continued on for some time?
No, the last major exterior work that was done was a new roof, and that was done about 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a study session, so we'll all be offering some comments, and then I'd like to offer the applicant the opportunity to ask questions when we finish that. Osma, why don't you start us off?
Okay, well, hi. Thanks for your presentation. I am familiar with this building. I grew up in Palo Alto. I would say my first reaction is a question on maybe the choice of choosing the horizontal grain versus a vertical grain. And even not just the grain, but the level of detail that is currently existing with the cedar shingles. There's a sort of sense that once we move to something new, there's a chance that that extra layer of detail would get lost. And in terms of, I mean, I appreciate the color palette that you've brought forth. I think it'll work with the landscape pretty nicely, but I'm reacting a little bit to, fiber cement's really, really smooth, and in terms of the joints of where a panel ends and begins, I think there's a lot to sort of study and maybe also consider something a bit finer grain in detail, or potentially a slightly different application that still maintains kind of the vibrancy that the shingles actually give because of how detailed and how many edges you see. It sort of works with the landscape really well, because the landscape is very detailed. You have these small details, and so I would say that was my initial reaction. But I'd like to hear what my other board members have to say.
Robert, you want to follow up?
Sure. Yeah, same with me. I've seen this building for, oh my God, as long as it's been there probably, and I've always liked it. There's a nice, warm, soft feeling about that building with the wood shakes and or shingles. And unfortunately, using a hardy plank type product, to me, just makes it look like, half the new apartment buildings or hotels along the freeway that are going up. It just detracts from the quality of the building. I'm not, I understand completely why, this is a revolution, or I shouldn't say revolution, but I mean, it's a good product. That's why it's used on a regular basis. It's almost indestructible, but it still takes something away from the quality of the building itself. Unfortunately, there aren't too many other alternatives for something that, instead of, as you mentioned in the correspondence, goes from a 8 to 10 year lifespan to a 30-year lifespan. It's very understandable. So I'm not really thrilled about it, but I guess this is an example of the old adage that the landscaping will hide most of the building, so it softens it up. As far as the through wall units, those are horrible. I hate those things. And especially the way you've applied them just wherever they needed to be randomly. But the only way I've seen them successfully done is in many cases where they are, in fact, some of the literature that we've received from you is where the unit is integrated below the windows, so the whole entity becomes, you've got the louvers across the full length of the window, even if it's a little bit bigger than the unit, and then it blends as one large unit. On this particular situation where they just pop through the wall based on their necessity on the inside, I just cannot accept that. I think that needs to be better thought out.
Alex?
Great. So thank you for your presentation. So with regard to the hardy shingle, I would say it's probably the most environmentally preferable choice of material for this particular retrofit. So I can accept that. And I think, as my other board members have mentioned, that it doesn't have any subtlety. I think when we've seen several projects, we have several projects in Palo Alto with it, and they've been painting them sort of bright colors, and it sort of fights with the cedar shingle subtlety, right? Like it seems like they're trying to do two different things. And I would say I'm encouraged by the perspectives that you have here on the screen here. I think they're showing a subtler color than what ended up being printed in our set, and it seems like they're a little bit more subtle than what's on the color board. And I would encourage you to try to do a more subtle colors than what's on the board. The board's pretty close. It's pretty good. There are several places on the building where there are existing panels meeting on an outside corner with shingles, and I would sort of suggest to pay close attention to those, and so we don't have two different colors and two different materials, visible from the street, because it's pretty awful design detail. I also, when I walked around the site, I saw like a lot of exterior conduit around like exterior stairs and things. And if you guys can clean that up, that would, I think, look a lot better. It seems like that there've been a lot of modifications to the building over time, and it'd be great to clean that up a little bit. I think also with the change in the shingles to the hardy shingle, there are, it seems like you might have places where it will clash with the fences, the existing fences. So I would say pay attention to that. It seems like some of the fences are stained and others are not. So maybe there's a way to make those a little bit more consistent. When I walked around the site, I was wondering if it made any sense to highlight the entrance more on Lytton. Maybe it doesn't make any difference for the residents of the building, but I lived in the neighborhood, and I actually never knew that the entrance was on Lytton, like versus University or Middlefield. And with regard to I think the staff asked for comments on the entrance parking, and I don't really have any comments on that. I think it's hard to deal with ADA as it is, and so I'm sure you're probably just doing what can actually be done by code. And I think that's all that I have on this one, but I generally am supportive of the project. I am supportive of the changes to the landscape, and removing the lawn I think is key. I also saw, when I was looking at the site, some of the redwood trees, or maybe just a couple feet off of the building, and that's kind of a no-no generally. I mean, normally, if you have something like redwood tree, we would try to keep it at least 10 feet away from the building. So it seems like there are some issues with the existing landscape that should be addressed at some point. And then I think as Robert was mentioning the HVAC, the packaged terminals, and that's not my preferred aesthetic, but it seems to me that for senior housing, like the HVAC system is really critical. I think I've noticed it with like my parents that as they get older, they're like more sensitive to that, and so I can accept them. I think the other option I would say is the mini split where the units are up on the roof, but then you have to have a way to get the refrigerant lines down to each unit, and so if you don't have a place for that, then they go on the outside of the buildings, the conduit lines, and so that's not attractive either. So so I can live with them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, I think I'm a little bit less sanguine about the whole project myself, so I'll start with the siding as well. My looking at the building is that those cedar shingles are almost brand new, and the reason they look so discolored right now is because you never put any finish on them. You put the shingles up and left it alone, and they're just starting their weathering process to turn brown. So it's a shame that they weren't protected more, and I think shingles can last a lot longer than 7 to 10 years on a building. If you look all over town, we have many, many houses that are beautiful, lovely buildings with cedar shingle siding. It's an important traditional material in our community, and to change away from that on a building like this, I think is a real loss. And especially when you just invested a significant amount of money fixing them, I'm really bewildered as to why you would want to tear them off and start over. I'm also concerned that there's a real environmental impact. Those shingles come from the very best cedar trees. The grain lines are tight and perpendicular, and we cut down a lot of them to make the shingles in that building, and now 3 years later you're proposing to throw them away. It just seems to me a travesty to do that. We have an enormous amount of resource went in. We need to respect that, and you should be, I think, keeping those shingles and preserving them and putting some effort into maintaining them. And I think they will give you a long life. I just don't understand why you would want to put new shingles on and then a few years later throw them away. And I think it's a significant aesthetic change to the building, putting hardy plank horizontal siding. You've also proposed the least expensive hardy plank. There's several versions that are thicker with deeper shadow lines, which would look better. And in my mind, it's just a very inexpensive building material that's used more on less expensive, less prominent properties, and this is not that. This is on an important corner right next to downtown. A lot of people know and love this building, and the shingles were a big part of putting that building into the redwood grove that it's in. So I just don't support changing to horizontal fiber cement lap siding. I very much appreciate your concerns about fireproofing and wanting a more durable material, and if you are determined to change, I believe there's several new products on the market that might give you a little bit more sense of detail and fineness with, we've come across in my firm sort of a siding material made out of fly ash cement. Boral is the company who makes it. You might investigate that. It's fairly new on the market, but it's similar price to hardy plank, but in my opinion, it has more variety of choices of patterns, and it might just look better. I think this material is just too thin, it's too simple and inexpensive looking, and it's a real step down. I just can't support stepping away from the cedar shingles you have to do that. Your application is a study project that's not detailed out, but again, when you take these two boards and they're angled slightly because it's a bevel, and you try to join them at a corner, you just can't do it. And so you have to have corner boards, vertical strips there. That dramatically changes how the building looks. Your renderings just don't show that. It's a series of colored planes. When you start to detail it out and really think about it, it will look very different. The corner boards, the 3 or 4 inch boards vertically at each corner on a building like this, which has so many corners, it will really change how it looks. The same thing when you come to the bottom of all these overhanging balconies. These boards are really thin. You're proposing that we just look up at the bottom of this and that's it? Again, you need more detailing, typically a belly band, some trim, some detailing. I'm asking you, I think the board will be asking you to just up your level of design on this, to really think through all these details to make this a suitable building for the prominent location it's in. Regarding the air conditioning units, I share the comments of Robert that they're just not acceptable the way they are. They need to be much more carefully integrated and designed in to the project. So his idea of perhaps integrating them with the trim around a window, or as Alex suggested, if you could get a mini split system, and perhaps you could run the conduits in some sort of concealed trim piece on an inside corner and put them up on the roof. It just takes some more thought, I think, to really figure out how to integrate and make changes to this building. The overall impression I have looking at your application is that you're basically playing with colors. That's sort of the palette you've given yourself, and I think that you need to really look at the details just a whole lot more carefully to prove to us that you can justify changing the material of the siding if you really are determined to do it. On the entrance off of Lytton, I'm concerned that you haven't really addressed, I've driven by that building once or twice a day for the past 10 years, and I can't tell you how many times a delivery truck tries to pull in, gets blocked by a car, clogs up the traffic. And I think it's because there's a lot of deliveries and service type stuff going in through that entrance, and you have just a very narrow drive-through there, and it's very confusing. And I would think you might want to just reconsider a little bit. Is it possible to make it wider, or to make sure you don't have anything but residents dropping off their Ubers and taxis and residents dropping off people? Because right now it just functionally doesn't work, I don't think. It's too tight. And as I look at your renderings, you seem to even have a series of bollards that reduce that one narrow spot to, must be just the width of a car at best. But it's very easy for that to clog up, to block up traffic on Lytton, and to make it not useful as a real entrance to the building. So I think the other changes on parking are fine if staff is supportive of that, but I think that entrance off Lytton could be improved somehow. Once you're doing all this work on the building, you might try to find a way to make that better. So you've heard from us. Does anybody else on the board want to add anything? Ozma?
I think your point about the cedar shingles is really valid. I mean, it seems like we've all been sort of responding a little bit to the material choice, and also just recognizing that the existing is very warm and very detailed, and so in terms of the renovation, there is a lot to live up to in that sense, that it would be a real shame to lose all that. So I think that's a good point that you made.
Just two minor comments. One is that on the corners, I do support your comment about more details. There are ways of doing the corners where you don't have the corner board.
Have you tried it with hardy plank, Alex?
Yeah, we did on low-income housing. There were metal corners.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they look like metal corners.
Yes. But you don't have to have the corner board. And some of the metal corners are better than others. And then the other thing is on the cedar, on like really high-end houses, each shingle is like hand dipped, right? Because you need to do both sides. You can't just paint it after it's installed, and it's pretty labor. I mean, I think that's the issue, is that is the cost of the finishing versus not leaving them untreated and then having to deal with the problem later. So it's the issue of like first cost versus maintenance cost.
But they just finished putting the money into the shingles already on the house. It's a shame to put them on the building and then not finish them whatsoever. That doesn't matter to our application here.
I know, but then the other thing too is it seems like the quality of the shingles varies. It does seem like there are some areas that have newer shingles, but that's not true for the entire building. I walked around the whole thing, and it seems like it's in varying condition.
Does the applicant have any questions or concerns? This is a study session, so it's informal, and this is your chance to get feedback from what we've said, and I'd love for you to have the opportunity to ask any other questions.
I don't know if I have questions, but is it okay if I kind of summarize what I heard from you all? Is that okay?
Please do.
Okay, because I think they were all great comments, and I really appreciate that. And our goal is, of course, to provide a building that is to the level of the, beauty and quality of, what that site deserves, and we do understand that the existing materials show a certain softness and scale and quality. So I agree with your comments there. So I think what we can do is we can, within a fiber cement product, we could within the Hardy products, we could see what other options there are for thicker boards or other variety of things. We could also look at other fiber cement products. As you had mentioned, we're happy to do that and see if there's any products that, for around the same price point that might be more subtle or might have a little more softness to it than the Hardy products. And we can look at the detailing, and maybe there's certain detailing that doesn't add much expense but could really upgrade the quality of the building and the aesthetics. So I think those are all good comments, and we'll take those to heart and go back and look at that some more. And as far as the wall units, grouping them with the windows makes sense. So we have to see how it works with the functioning of the unit on the interior a little bit. We can't just completely ignore the interior if there's a wall or something there. And also these are small units, so furniture and things does matter, when we locate these things, but still, we'll take that comment to heart, and we'll really try to group them with the windows and create like a more organized facade with the wall units and do something better with that. So we'll study that some more. For the drop-off, we can look at that. I'm not sure how much room we can create with all the existing landscaping that's there, but we'll certainly look at that too, because it's good to know that there is traffic backing up in that area, and we'll see if we can come up with some ideas for that. We'll talk to Kareem and Jackie and the design team and look at that. And then I also, there's a comment about the colors, and I think generally what I'm hearing is a warm color palette that complements that neighborhood and complements the landscaping and the trees is what you're looking for. So we'll probably stay with something similar, but maybe I heard somebody say that maybe make sure the colors stay in the subtle ranges and nothing too strong or too bold. So we'll also keep that in mind, and we'll go back and look at that. And I can't think of, I feel like I understand the comments in general well enough. I don't have any specific questions, but do you have any questions or?
No, I just wanted to, we did struggle with that drop-off quite a bit. We were really concerned about keeping the redwood trees. If we could remove a redwood tree, and that would help that drop off, but we put bollards there because there's quite a bit of pedestrian traffic, and we made the drop off as wide as we could while still respecting the tree. So those were the issues.
Okay, then.
Board members, if I may, there was also some conversation about the entrances, and there was Board member Liu had a comment about the stairways, if he could elaborate on that.
Alex?
I think there's some of the lighting around the exterior staircases. So it's just that there's been a lot of stuff that's been tacked onto them over time.
I do want to just add a note that the protection of the redwood trees is somewhat important to the project is likely going to be exempt from CEQA as currently designed. As soon as they start removing protected redwood trees, it may significantly increase the timeline if they have to prepare an environmental document related to that. So,
Thank you, Claire. Okay, anybody else? I think that wraps us up on this item. So I'd like to move right on to the next item on our agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Next item is a public hearing regarding 2609 Alma Street, recommendation on an applicant's request for approval of a major architectural review to allow the demolition of 2 existing residential buildings and 2 carports and construction of two 3-story buildings comprised of 4 condominiums, including 1 below-market rate unit. The environmental assessment is that this is an addendum to the mitigated negative declaration prepared for the earlier project on this site. Staff, do we have a report?
Yes, good morning, Board. We have a slight staff change here. Philip Brennan is moving on to another jurisdiction, and so Emily Foley will be taking over this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome.
There you go.
Good morning.
Okay, Tom, just to give a second. Where's all that? Is it there? Okay, here's the scrolling. Okay.
So as previously stated, this presentation is for 2609 through 2617 Alma. The proposal is to demolish 4 rental apartments, it's 2 duplex buildings, and construct 4 ownership units, including 1 below market rate unit. Each unit has a 2-car garage. They vary in size from 2 to 4 bedrooms and about 860 to 1,300 square feet. This project was previously approved in September of 2015. However, the building permit wasn't pulled within the allotted amount of time, so the planning entitlement did expire, and so we are reviewing it again. The associated parcel map to subdivide the 4 condominium units was recorded at the county and is still valid. There were no major changes to the architecture. However, in 2017, the Affordable Housing Code changed, resulting in the need to provide 1 below market rate unit, which, as previously stated, the proposal is doing. The project is located on Alma Street in the Midtown neighborhood. The lots along Alma Street are in the RM30 zoning district, and the parcels in the rear are R1 single family. There was one neighbor comment received after publication of the staff report, which was provided to the board when it was received. It had a question about the relationship between the height of the building in the RM30 district compared to the R1 single-family houses behind it. However, this was addressed at the time of the original approval. The design of the building steps up from the street and steps down in the rear. It complies with the daylight plane that is required for RM30 when it abuts to R1 zone in the rear. So it's 2-story in the front and the back, and the 3-story is in the middle of the property. Here are the elevations showing that. Sorry. Here are the elevations showing that along Alma, you see the 2-story form. The side elevations show how it steps up towards the middle, and this is building A that's in the front. Building B is in the back. This one shows the daylight plane on the west and east elevations, showing how closer to the single-family homes it is lower. Additionally, the building materials include wood siding and various colors of stucco to break up the massing as well. And so the staff recommends, the Architectural Review Board recommends approval of the proposed unit. Oops, there we go. Based on the findings and is subject to the conditions of approval. You may ask me any questions. Additionally, the applicant is here and has prepared a presentation.
Okay, why don't we hear from the applicant? If you could, please state your name and spell for the record.
Thank you. My name is Chris Coomer. That's C-H-R-I-S K-U-M-M-E-R-E-R. And my company is CKA Architects in Menlo Park. Happy to be in front of you again. And thank you, Emily, for the thorough presentation. We've worked the planners hard on this project, I think she's our 5th. So thanks for jumping on the project. And the presentation was great, so I'm going to kind of try to keep mine brief. You've seen this view of the project. I'd like to quickly go through our history, just so you understand the amount of scrutiny we've had, and hopefully we've been thoughtful about responding to the comments we've gotten all along the way here. So we started in 2013 at the DRC, and then brought our project preliminarily here in 2014. It was a much larger volume, and we got some good feedback from you folks, and revised the design to be smaller and try to be more sensitive to the neighbors. And then that redesign came back in 2015. We were continued again till October of 2015, and then that was approved. And as a part of this, the environmental study was also approved. So we did, because we're in the, I want to call it toxic plume, I forget the name of it. And so we had a full environmental study done, and limits of grading were established and whatnot. So that was also approved. Then the building permit was set to issue in September of 2016, but the property was sold. So our new clients took over and had a miscommunication at the building department. They thought they were extending the permits for a year, and it was only 6 months. So we ended up back in this loop. And so here we are again to try to get this reapproved, and thank you for spending the time, and I'll try to go through this quickly. So here's our site. I think you've seen it. It's a pretty blighted property, 2 low-rise 60s buildings. There they are. The one to the right is not part of this. So here's our neighbor to the left on Alma, and here's our neighbor to the right. So this will remain and is not a part of our project. This is worth noting. This is what we started with, and here's kind of our design process. This is a 3-story building all the way front to back. This complied with the zoning, but wasn't very sensitive to the neighborhood. So with the feedback we got, we took this. Here was the rendering of that version. And we were given direction to use the width of the lot instead of the length, separate our vehicle and pedestrian entries, and just reduce the bulk in general. So this was the ensuing design, which I think was a lot more sensitive. And as a part of this, we worked with the neighbors too. And if I remember correctly, it was with Lisa. They were very generous, had us to their house, and we sat down, talked about this redesign, and said, we're going to try to keep it real simple or 2 stories on your side, mask the 3rd stories with these roofs. And they were supportive of that approach. And so it was very nice of them to engage with us at the time. Here's another rendering of that. Then we were continued for some smaller items, the detailing of the pedestrian gate and the garage door. So these are images of those. And this was the ensuing rendering, which was sort of the final one that shows the full project. Here's our materials board. So it's been thoroughly reviewed with a lot of analysis, acoustic analysis, because of being on Alma as well. Now, in this latest iteration, as staff mentioned, we did have to add the BMR unit, which is a significant concession by our clients, but that was something that was not negotiable. And then we went through another round here. So we had to justify fire ladder access and floor area. Again, realignment of street trees. There was one street tree that moved in the building permit process. We had to move it back in this process. So these things were on the margins. And then we actually got a different determination of daylight plane, which was more favorable, but we're not able to we didn't enlarge the building for that. And the plantings were revised to be more current and more drought tolerant. So it's hard to see the daylight plane here, but there's a spot that we're not using because of the more favorable determination. Here's some of those native plants. And so in conclusion, it's been a pretty thorough process for us. We've been doing this for 5 years, and I felt, really good about the initial approval when we got it here. We worked with the neighbors, we worked with staff, we worked with the comments we got here. We took a pretty large design and made it hopefully into something sensitive. And everybody felt great because here's a portion of Alma that really hasn't seen any work for 50 years. And we were hoping it was going to be this first building that would sort of spur some redevelopment on this stretch. And so that is still the hope that it can continue and get built and be the sort of first thing here that makes this block a little better, and in fact, this whole stretch. So thank you for the time. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I don't have any speaker cards. Is there any member of the public who would like to address this project? Then we'll close the public portion of this meeting. Does anybody have any questions for staff or the applicant? Ozma?
So there are three stucco colors. In the render, however, it looks, thank you. Sorry, I was just wondering if you could clarify a little bit on the elevations and how, in terms of, I guess this is my first time looking at the stucco, but in the render it sort of looks like a really simple subtlety, and then in the elevations it says there's 3 different colors, and then here I can see 1 and 2 are similar, but 3 is really different. So what's your design intent with using 3 different colors and where they go on your building?
Yeah, thank you. As you know, it's hard to render these things consistently, and so the intent is really to follow the materials board and for them to be subtle variations and not loud. But we're trying, the genesis of this was, to reduce bulk by having different colors. And so that's the intent, is we're really using, on this color board, the 2 middle upper colors to create variation, and then that yellowish color on the left is just a little bit of an accent. But that, if the question is which one do we choose, it's this here, color board.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? If not, I'd like either Robert or Alex to start us off, and maybe you two were on the board when this was approved, so bring us up to speed. Was there any issues, concerns? How did it go about? Alex, maybe why don't you take the lead for us?
Yes, so I think that I think as Chris had shown in his presentation, that the board was not happy with the full 3-story scheme, all 4 units, 3 stories front to back, and also I think the board didn't like that the driveway was all open, is my recollection, to the street. And the units really didn't have very much privacy. And I think we've all been to the site. Alma is very noisy, and so I think the board was just not seeing that was like the best option. So they did the major redesign, and then to this proposed scheme, and then we did also continue the redesign to address some of the things, some of the windows and stairs and details and landscape. There were, my recollection is that that the neighbors did complain about the 3-story scheme, and that we didn't hear from anybody on the revised scheme. And so I'm in support of the project. I think, in looking at the project again, there are 2 things that I think could be addressed better, and I think these are easily resolved. One is the rear elevation, I think could look better. And I think the elevation isn't drawn that well. It doesn't really show the setback of the third floor very well. But I'm just thinking in terms of proportions and colors. I think it could be more attractive. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because it's only 10 feet from the rear property line, so the neighbors on Emerson are going to see it. And then I think there's been a revision on the hedge on that back property line. And I don't remember it being in the middle of the rear setback. And I see that there's a utility easement. But I'm thinking that that's not going to be viable. I think that we have to figure out a way of having that unit have some sort of patio space and have privacy for the neighbors in the back. And I don't know what the right solution is. I was thinking maybe bleach trees or something where you have the green mass 10 to 20 feet up high, and then it's open on the bottom for a patio use, and that maybe you need a second layer of landscape. Maybe there has to be something like vines on the fence or something. But I think it doesn't really work as it is proposed now. And anyway, so Chris, yes, if you had any comments on that?
It was a condition of approval. So it wasn't on the initial approved set, but it was a condition of approval that we add screening back there. And so Philip helped us work through that item, and that's where these 10 trees came in, or 15. Because of the easement, we weren't going to plant them in the easement, so we kind of backed into it, if you will. So I agree, it's not the ideal solution because the original proposal was to have a patio out there. I'd be supportive of either figuring out a way to plant in the easement with something that's not a tree, but it's more of a hedge, so that we accomplish the same things without killing the backyard.
Okay, and then I would like, I guess, if we can work it out, there's the easement, but then you have a underground electrical connection back there. So there might be actually two different standards for how to plant around there. So I think it may be kind of tricky, but I think we have to resolve that because I think there's only 10 feet, and if you have I think the hedge now would take out like 5 feet of that, and it's in the middle of the 10 feet. So I think we have to figure out something else for that. Otherwise, I'm in support of the project. I think that for the reasons that we approved it before, in that it steps, it has a fairly strong horizontal roof profile that blends in with the neighboring mid-century buildings. And so that's where I'm on this one. I think I mentioned before, last time, that I wasn't crazy about some of these like 9 to 10 foot rooms, but that's not really the purview of the board. But it seems to me that there's some undesirable things inside the units. Robert?
Okay. Well, from my recollection, it did take quite a few changes based on the initial proposal that came for us. But the thing is, even in this final version, when you're the first building on a block to go either 2 stories or 3 stories with nothing else around you, is that the thing really stands out. And just because technically you're allowed to do it by code doesn't mean that it fits the character of the neighborhood. Basically, my objection to it is the same thing it was at that point, is that the units in the back is just way too close to the back property line for a 3rd story. The front one is probably okay, mainly because it is facing Alma and at cars going 40 miles an hour. It's not that big a deal. So I'm up in the air at this point whether I believe I voted against it the first go-around also, but I'll leave it open at the moment.
That's it. Ozma?
Hey. Yeah, I think in general it looks quite handsome from the street. I just discovered there's a stucco color number 4 here on the rear elevation, and we don't have that in front of us. And there's also a obscure glass material back here as well that is, I don't know what that is. So I think in terms of materiality and what you're doing on the elevations, I think I just need more information for one. I'm okay with a bunch of different colors of stucco. Not entirely sold on how they're being played out right now. Just given that there's a lot of it, and I do understand that you have worked in a series of reveals, but I'm not sure how successful it is with the colors that you're trying to use. So if you guys do come back, I would really like to see how these colors actually do look, and sort of more of an attempt to sort of render these a little bit more authentically to sort of understand how they do affect the street. I agree with my fellow board members about the rear yard, and that it is quite small. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a handsome building in general. I think there's a little bit of what's the word? It's still a little unclear exactly what I'm getting. I see a render and I see some design intent, and then when I'm really going through your elevations, it doesn't really add up. So that makes me a little nervous. And that's where I am right now.
Thank you, Ozma. I'm feeling that this project has been reviewed, looked at very recently, and I really am uncomfortable with the idea of grinding it out again. I think they've been through the process. We approved the building. I think the city needs to have this kind of building built, especially in this location, and we owe it to the applicant, to the town, to expedite or at least help them get this thing out of here. To have to come back again, I don't want to discount, Ozma, your comments about the colors are correct. I think that it could use a little more work. Alex, that back elevation is not the strongest part of the building. And that backyard, yet 10 feet full of hedges, not a smart move. People are going to want some space there. I acknowledge the neighbor's comments about it being tall at the back property line facing a single-family neighborhood. But we all know that Alma Street is going to redevelop with buildings like this. It's an RM30 zone. So I think the first time the board went through this, they did an admirable job of balancing that out. It was a lot of work, it sounds like, to bring down a 3-story building across the whole site, and clearly the design has a lot of effort put into modulating it, to attempting to placate the neighbors, to fit in better. I think it's been very well done that way. So I can support the project as it is. I can also support if we want to put a few conditions of approval, maybe that come back to a consent if necessary. But I'd like to see us move this along. This is new housing on Alma Street where it's desperately needed. And I think we should be aware of that and not go through a review process again. I don't know. We need 3 votes. Robert said he voted against it the first time, and Robert doesn't usually change his mind easily. But where do we stand?
No, I mean, I agree completely. It's one of these things that that is an area, I don't want to say in transition, but it's going to happen. I mean, it's just land is too valuable to not have it happen. But again, it is definitely, if anything's going to have to change on that, I think the back unit, should be maybe a slightly smaller. It doesn't need to be a 1,400 square foot unit back there. And I think just 3 stories of stucco needs to be, something changed on that. I mean, it's the old adage, it's a 4-sided building, and basically 3 sides have been addressed and the back hasn't. And the person who lives in those 2 buildings on the adjacent street have to look at that 3-story stucco mass for the next 30 years.
I hear you. My understanding is that they've already finished construction documents on this and already had a permit issued once, so changing the size of that back unit is a major step back from the applicant's point of view, I would think. Does anybody else have other thoughts of how we might change it a little bit or condition it and still let it get out of here? Alex?
Yeah, I would say, for me, if we change the colors on the back facade and figure out a way to have patio space and landscape screening in the back, and however we do that, subcommittee or consent is fine with me. And then to answer your question about the glazing, so normally what we've done on other projects where we have a multifamily unit which is 10 feet away from a single family house, usually we have like a double hung window, and the upper part is clear glass and the bottom part is obscure glass, so that just from sight lines inside the unit, they can't look down into the neighbor's backyard. And so what we've done on a number of projects in town, and we haven't done it this way as shown in the drawings, where a bedroom has all obscure glass. And we don't have to do it. It's not in the, I don't think that's in the code, right? I mean, this is something that we've just done on other projects, and I've seen them, and they seem to work, and it seems to placate the neighbors. So.
Yes, thank you. That was going to be my question. We certainly can just obscure the bottom of the window. That is, a standard treatment that we do that does protect the privacy, but still allows the light in. I did want to ask a question about the landscaping in the rear. Is the board seeing that landscaping as a privacy screen, or are you seeing it more as a screen that helps reduce the massing?
Alex, do you want to address that?
Well, the problem I see is that you've got a straight stucco two-story wall, and the only thing that changes is that the bottom half is painted one color and the top half is another color. I just don't like that. I've never, we always seem to be hung up on the whole the clear versus the frosted glass, everything else. It's like, I don't think there are that many peeping Toms around that everybody seems to worry about, that everybody's going to sit up there and look down at the neighbor's yard. I'm more concerned that it's an ugly design from that side. I'm more concerned if I was the owner of that building, I would hate to sit in my backyard and look at that thing. Not if somebody was sitting up there looking down at me. I don't really care. And I think that's the difference I have. It's just a very unattractive rear of the building. I think some money needs to be spent either putting some wood back there like is on the other three sides, and maybe even a variation of some sort. The windows seem to be nicer on the front than they are on the back. It's not close to the level of quality that if I was the owner of the building and back of it, it's bad enough having the three-story building, and then it might as well at least be an attractive-looking building I'm looking at. That's my main concern. So
if I may suggest, if we're just talking about material changes on the rear, that's certainly something that could be handled at a subcommittee meeting. And as far as privacy, I think most of these windows look to be high sill windows, so the privacy issue has already been handled in the placement of the windows.
Right, I agree. Like I said, I'm not too worried about the privacy aspect of it.
So for staff, I think when you have like a stucco building, like 10 feet off of the rear property line, my take is to, reduce the visual impact on the neighbors. And so one is like typically like a wood facade or a taupe colored stucco, something that just fades into the background and recedes. And then I also like to have an evergreen hedge, ideally like 15 feet high, 12 to 15 feet high. That just makes everything much more attractive. And I guess the way I would say it is like, I think I would treat this particular backyard as I would normally do on a single family house's side yard, right? Because that's basically the kind of dimensions that we're looking at with only a 10-foot rear yard. So just trying to make it very low key and fade into the background.
So I guess I'm just thinking if we're using the shrubbery and the landscaping to more break up the massing, then it doesn't need to be a straight line of, shrubs or trees. It can be more clumped together and then give some more sense of rear yard space.
Well, even I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, okay, so I think generally I think the continuous line is good, and then in this particular case, I'm willing to break it up. And it seems like there's a possibly in two. And then I think what's very strange, on this particular one, is that everything that we're looking at on the first 2 floors is coplanar, but we have 4 different colors, plus wood railings. And I think that is just too much on this particular facade.
Ozma, did you have more to add?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with Robert more in that sense in terms of the back facade, that I actually think adding some of that wood material to come around, as it's true, I guess, from a ground level perspective, if you have the hedges that maybe block out a certain amount, it's really like the top that you would see, and I guess I'm not sure that something super subtle would make sense. I think something that is more in tune with whatever else is happening on the facade would be more appropriate. And I think I also agree with you, Peter, that it's true this has been through a lot. I could see this going to subcommittee. I think the issues that we have brought up are reviewable in a subcommittee, so I could support that.
So I'd like to have the architect come back to the microphone and respond to what we've been saying. Is this something that you think you can successfully modulate without being a big deal? Because you need to convince us. I think you're on the edge of getting sent back for another design review.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for the chance to comment. I'd like to step back for 1 second. In the initial discussions about privacy, it was noted that the neighbor at the rear, who was a very nice older gentleman, has a forest in his backyard, so it's evergreen back there. So these concerns at the time were not as much of a concern, and it's still that way. So just as far as plantings go, and I know plantings can be a fig leaf because trees come down and whatnot, but that was part of the initial discussion. Wanted to bring that to bear. I'm not opposed to...
Can I interrupt you for a second? I want to be clear. Is it true there's a heavily landscaped property on the other side of this elevation on the neighbor's property?
Correct. It's evergreen and quite dense.
Do we have any photos or evidence of that?
Let's see here.
Robert or Alex, do you remember that from the previous review? Was that the case?
We can maybe see here. If you look behind that dotted line,
But they're also removing several trees on the property, too.
Yeah, exactly. Trees can also be removed next year, sort of thing, so I don't want to...
Being proposed, they're actually being, yeah.
Why don't you go on, Chris, and address our questions about the elevation, the design of the elevation.
This photo will show you the evidence of the tree behind, if that's suitable. I think the suggestions on the elevation are good ones, and from my point of view, just adding the wood veneer to that top right section of the elevation, to me seems like a nice improvement. And then maybe scrapping the yellow color on the lower would just simplify that. The glazing, the obscure glazing, was just something we worked out with the neighbor. Again, it was the elderly man who was behind there, and the neighbors were looking out for him. And so we proposed sort of half obscure, and they just said, we don't want to have anything back there. Our clients felt it was odd to have a room that didn't have a window you could look out, but that was a concession we were willing to make. So I agree it's not great, but that's how we got there.
Yeah, I don't have a problem, like I said, with the glazing. That could also easily be changed sometime in the future if something changes. But I do, for instance, on A 3.2B, the elevation that faces the driveway, if we can call it, the wood slats there on the second story stop right at the corner, and I don't like a change like that occurring on an outside corner anyway. I prefer, if you're going to change materials, I prefer to change it.
It doesn't conclude. So if you look on the top elevation on that sheet, it wraps the corner.
Oh, it's way back here?
It's a screen that wraps the corner for privacy, so it's on two sides and stops where that window is, where the stucco is. Another item that was brought up was we had
Well, still, my thought was that if that wood material goes all the way across, similar to what it is on the front of the building, or I should say the Alma Street side,
Yeah.
and as you said, get rid of the yellow, which I think is an arbitrary color that doesn't really need to be there, I think it would help enhance that backside quite a bit. It also splits up the elevation from the back. It is obviously in a pure elevation like this, the third story looks a whole lot closer, obviously, than it is in reality, but still, I think that would help a great deal.
I think those are good suggestions. I also wanted to address the point about three-story stucco walls, because I just want to make sure there's not confusion about that.
No, I know it's a two-story.
They don't exist in the project unless you're in the middle of the project and looking up and you're in the center between those two buildings and you look within the project.
Okay, thank you. We're not trying to re-debate the
Yeah,
project.
okay,
wanted
but
to
I don't
focus on the
want
back.
to-
So I think we're done with questions for you. Thank you.
Cool, all right, thanks.
The question to the board is, do we put this to a subcommittee, or do we want to see it back again?
I'm fine with the subcommittee. This is not that, drastic that it needs to come back for total review on our part.
Alex, maybe you can make a motion for us then?
Okay, I will, let's see, let me get the findings out here. I will make a motion that we recommend approval of the project, subject to the findings and existing conditions of approval in attachment C, with the addition that it returns to the subcommittee for review of the rear, what do we want to say?
Rear elevation.
Revision of the rear elevation. And 2 is consider an alternative planting plan for the rear property line that allows for visual screening and patio use.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, let's take a vote on it then. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion carries 4-0. Thank
you.
I'd like to call a 5-minute adjournment, and then Alex will be taking over for chair after that. Thank you.
We are ready to reconvene. Item number 4, 429 University Avenue, recommendation on applicant's request for approval of a minor architectural review consistent with the condition of approval number 3 for a previously approved mixed-use building, requiring architectural review approval for the proposed west elevation wall design, landscape details, and exterior building materials, colors, and craftsmanship. The environmental assessment is the use of a mitigated negative declaration prepared for parcel 14 PLN 00222, and the zone district is CDC GP, which is our downtown commercial. And our project planner is Adam Peterson. Welcome, Adam.
Good morning, Chair Liu, members of the Architectural Review Board. I'm Adam Peterson from the Planning and Community Environment Department. I'm here today to present a condition compliance item for 429 University Avenue. As you stated, this item was approved by City Council on February 6th of 2017. There was a condition of approval that was part of that this item returned to the Architectural Review Board for evaluation of 3 specific things. This is an evaluation of the design of the west wall, or the interior property line wall along the 3rd and 4th elevations. It's also an evaluation of the landscape plans and details, and then also an evaluation of the exterior building materials and colors that are proposed in craftsmanship for the project. As you're aware, the project's located at 429 and 425 University. This is on the corner of University Avenue and Kipling Street, as you can see here. The first item that I wanted to get into is the proposal for the design of the west wall. What the applicant has proposed is to basically have sort of a cement plaster over the west wall with aluminum reveals. These aluminum reveals are about 3 inches wide along horizontal portions, and then 1.5 inches wide along the vertical and the angle portions, as you can see here in this slide along the 3rd and 4th elevations. On the first 2 floors, where the building is obscured by the adjacent buildings, the applicant proposes a CMU wall. Where it's exposed, the applicant proposes using a CMU wall with a text coat paint covering over the CMU. In terms of the landscaping that's proposed, there's less than 500 square feet of landscaping proposed for this entire project, for the entire building. The landscaping is proposed in individual pots. It's watered with a drip irrigation system. On the first floor, this is located in the upper right image on the screen. The first floor has 5 rectangular style planters that sort of border the open space area. These planters are roughly 3 feet long by 1 foot tall by about 1 foot wide. 2 are 4 feet long with the same height and length dimensions. These planters would be planted with a gray rush type plant. The second floor would have 1 planter. This is a round planter. It'd be planted with a western azalea. The 3rd floor would have 3 round planters planted with a sedge fern, and then the 4th floor would have similar rectangular planters. And these planters would be along the exterior of the elevator with a vine that grows up the elevator. The planting that's proposed is native, indigenous, and drought tolerant. Going back to the green wall on the first floor, that's planted with a California morning glory vine that would go up, and you could see that in the lower left. It's a sample. It's not exactly what's proposed, but that's a sample of what would be located on the ground floor along the alley elevation. Regarding the building materials, the applicant notes that these are the same materials that the ARB evaluated in the option 1 plans that were approved by City Council. This is a concrete, it's a 70% replacement of cement with slag material on the first 3 floors. The 4th floor would have cement plaster, cement plaster over the metal framed walls. The color scheme would consist more of a sandstone color on the first 3 floors for the for the slag material, and then the 4th floor would be more of a silver smoke color that the ARB can see on the material board. This silver smoke color would obviously be over the would be on the cement plaster over the metal stud walls. Like I mentioned, there's a CMU wall along the interior property line. Where it's covered by the building, there wouldn't be any treatment, but where it's exposed, there would be treatment with text coat paint. There is a skylight system, though, that's proposed on the 4th floor. It's not necessarily visible, but it's between the elevator and then the office building to provide some form of covering. So with that information, sorry. I'd like to back up. We did receive a comment letter, and I guess I'll keep going. We did receive a comment letter from the appellant in regards to the materials and the color scheme that's being used for the project. That comment letter was forwarded to the board, and the appellant is here today as well. With that information, staff's recommendation is that the board recommend approval of the project to the Director of Planning and Community Environment. Thank you.
Great. And so for the applicant, if you could come up and you have 10 minutes.
Good morning, all the ARB members. My name is Peter Coe, Coe Architects, Inc. We're located in downtown Palo Alto, and we got the project last year. We've been working on this project for the construction document with the building department for the last almost a year now. At this stage, we already got the building, fire, all the department approval, and then trying to obtain our demolition permit for continuation of construction with the project. Today, we're here just for those 3 items. One of the items, Adam has addressed it. I just want to say that there was a blank wall against the existing building. Only upper 2 level was visible from the street. You probably can see it from University Avenue a little bit, also Lane 30 on the alley space. Our concept was really simple because the upper 2 levels on 3rd and 4th floor, we have a different color, and actually I want to correct what Adam just said. The 1st and 2nd level was the color was a more beige color, and then upper 3rd level and 4th level was the smoky gray color we proposed. And we do have the concrete block infill between the structural columns along the west wall. The concrete block infill was recommended by the structural engineer because the movement of this entire structure that has to have the concrete block was like an infill. It's a lot better than a solid concrete wall along the west side. And the original design, the whole project we've been working on for last year has been followed exactly the conceptual project was approved. Option 1 was approved by City Council. So everything, we're trying to follow the elevations and everything. Only the upper part of the 3rd and 4th floor, it was proposed stucco finish over there. And our concept was really simple and just using the metal aluminum reviews to form like a tree light. It was going to be aluminum color, natural aluminum color, so it would be a contrast to the smoky gray color to form that tree-like patterns on the top. And I think that the colors really matched everything was proposed. So I just want to let you know I'm here to answer questions. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I have 1 speaker card from Michael Harbour. If you could come up, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning, board. So it's been 18 months since I've been back here. I'm disappointed that it's taken this long for the applicant to propose drawings after this last city council meeting. But as you know, there are three main reasons we're here for this, what is supposed to be a quasi-judicial hearing. And we have the proposed west elevation design, the landscape details, and then exterior building materials, colors, and craftsmanship. And the west wall design, in mine and other appellants' opinion, is out of character and context with the rest of the building. It is not consistent nor compatible with which was originally proposed to this ARB board or the city council by architect Joe Bellomo. These side chevrons appear somewhat like a tribal pattern and clearly stick out as an add-on by an unrelated architect, and I think this is the sixth architect that the applicant has now used for this project. When looking eastward down University Avenue, you have to think about the context, and again, how I initially was able to work with this appeal is that there was municipal code violations 18.110. And so we have to think about the Varsity Theater architecture, the Burge Clark formal Apple building, and the Hotel President as all buildings that you're looking at as looking eastward towards University Avenue. So this is not something that is just put together, slapped on just to address a design issue. The second major issue that we have here has to do with that of the materials, colors, and craftsmanships. It is impossible to evaluate the expected craftsmanship of the building or landscape because the applicant has not provided any background information, experience, or completed past projects of either the new building architect, contractor, project manager, or landscape architect. Joe Bellomo, whom I've spoken to about this project, has completely disavowed himself from this design, and in a phone conversation he said the current design is not his and he is no longer affiliated with the building, and he was adamant about that. Therefore, the applicant is obligated to resubmit, I believe, the entire plan to the ARB Council and the community in its entirety for evaluation. And if the plans aren't satisfactory, then the ARB must immediately notify the council of such. The applicant has previously praised her choice of architect, meaning Mr. Bellomo. She brought him here. She referenced all of his accolades, his Burge Clark designs, and stood here and applauded him for all of his past work. And she said that the new building would be iconic and that it would be an anchor with the existing project at 102 Alma, which is the parking spot, parking garage and offices there, that it would anchor the two things. Mr. Bellomo is no longer affiliated with this project, and since he disavows this building, I think this needs to be taken into consideration. And the other thing about the Bellomo projects is that the craftsmanship and construction of the materials is unique. And I think we need to ask the architect what his experience is in building these, who's going to do the contract management, what experience do they have in building these Bellomo projects? I don't imagine any. And it seems to me that we've had a bait and switch here.
And if you could try to wrap up. I think you've used.
I have 3 minutes, and I'm not there yet. But it looks to me that there is a tactic of cost cutting, which is going to result in unknown quality and craftsmanship with this building. And it's just too important an historic parcel to be left to chance without any additional scrutiny and confirmation of quality. And we must remember that 5 buildings are going to be torn down, including the Burge Clark buildings for this major development. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Harbour. And so we do allow the applicant to make comments based on the public comment period. So if you have anything that you wanted to address, I don't know if we have a time limit for this particular one. Maybe it's 10 minutes. So it's 10 minutes. Great.
Good morning. My name is Jaime Wong.
Could you please, Mr. Wong, could you just spell it for our transcriber, please?
Jaimewong. And my family is the one behind this project. First of all, I want to say that Bellomo, Mr. Harbour is very careful in his choice of words, saying Bellomo disavowed himself at this building. But really, we have his permission to use his design, and this is his design. And the reason why we switched architects is because When Belomo was completing this design, he had one person working for him who was studying for her architectural license. We didn't think that he had the staffing or the wherewithal to produce all the drawings that were necessary to get the building permit. And that's why we went to Peter Coe, an internationally recognized architect who has completed many buildings of this magnitude or greater and of this quality or greater. Belomo's experience is mostly local, Bay Area, if not entirely. I think that the appellant, and he wants to call himself appellant, but that appeal has left the station. City Council has already approved this project. So he is using a lot of misinformation to try and derail what is going to be a beautiful addition to the city. If he tried to do something constructive for the city instead of standing in the way of these things, he might find that the project of this magnitude is hard enough in itself without having to have obstacles put in their way. The level of scrutiny expected for this building is much higher than expected of any other construction. It is right in the middle of downtown. There are no Burge-Clark designed buildings being torn down, another piece of misinformation. It's going to be still iconic, same construction design, same construction techniques. In fact, the front runner for the concrete work is the same one that did the iconic building at the end of University Avenue. I just don't understand the level of animus that he has against this project. I am beginning to lose patience on that. Belomo has not repudiated this building. He has just said, I'm no longer involved in it. And I think that's clear, or that should be made clear. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Okay, I will close
I have a question of staff.
Sure. I was going to close the public portion of the meeting and open it up for questions of the board.
Okay, just to clarify for myself, it has been a while on this project. The last time it was before us, it was going to go to the city council. We did not approve the submittal, and then it went to city council, but I don't remember seeing this design. This option one is different than what we rejected?
So yes, you are correct. When we went to council, there were actually 3 options that were presented to them, and council chose to approve what we consider option number 1. Those drawings are up on our website.
Yeah, I downloaded it. That's how I got it. But I mean, so basically then, we haven't seen any of these 3 that the city council picked. Or I should say, none of those 3 options went through us.
I don't know that you've seen this full option in its current form, but it was approved by council, and council did have 3 items that they asked for the ARB to review at this time.
And I just want to clarify, I'm not trying to be facetious, but basically we're being asked to look at a portion of a design that we've never seen to begin with.
So in regards to your question, the ARB did, the 3 options that went before council, the ARB did review those options. This option 1 was the study session option, and then the applicant came back subsequently with an option 2, and then an option 3 before the ARB. So those 3 were brought before the council, and the council elected to go with option 1, which was reviewed in the study, the preliminary design reviewed by the ARB in September, I believe, of 2016, if my date is correct. I'd have to go back and check that exact date.
So you're telling me we've seen these before, because that doesn't look familiar to me. Okay.
Any other questions? No. Osma?
Sorry, I think I understood that we haven't seen this, and that this came out of the city council meeting, and that there were different options that were presented. at an earlier time?
Correct. There's been many iterations of this plan. Again, as noted, there were 3 options. The board had reviewed the other options. There was the option 1 plan, again, was reviewed by City Council, and the changes that were made, there were some conditions or some changes that were made, namely removing a corner office, having a portion of the third floor roof, fourth floor sort of floor extend over the office building. So there were some changes that were made to the plan at the council hearing.
Okay.
Okay, and then I just want to clarify for my board members that this is a separate, I think they've given us a separate project number on this particular one. It's a minor project, so we only have 2 reviews of this. And we normally would have like 3 reviews for a major project. And we are limited by the council scope, which is the 3 items. And we haven't seen, the board has not seen this particular design because the council made changes to the project. So we have not seen, like, say, like the corner cutout. Okay. Right. So we have not seen that, and the council hasn't seen it either. All right, is my understanding. Okay. Anybody want to start, Robert?
Sure. First of all, a couple of things here. On the title of the thing on the application, it says, requiring architectural review board approval of the proposed west elevation wall design, landscape details, and exterior building materials, color, and craftsmanship. Start with the bottom, the exterior building materials, I can see based on the color board. The colors I can see on the color board, but craftsmanship, seeing as though I don't even know what this design looked like before this point, I have no idea what the craftsmanship is, and it has nothing to do, I haven't seen a set of working drawings, and I'm not saying that usually that's the case, but it's very tough for somebody to say, I need you to judge the quality of the craftsmanship when there's really nothing to relate it to. I mean, I need to physically see something or see a set of construction documents where I can say, yes, the detailing is adequate or not adequate or whatever. So that one is sort of difficult to answer. As far as the review of the west elevation, from what I've seen on this, first of all, having not been able to put my input on the overall design of the building, but from what I do see here, putting stripes on 2 blank walls doesn't really enhance the quality of those walls, nor do those chevrons or whatever you want to call them relate to any other portion of the building. So this is I can see why it's a separate project because it really doesn't relate to the rest of the building at all. I don't see any chevrons or any 3-inch wide banding in the plaster or in any other portion of the facade. So to me, it makes no sense. I have a hard time approving this mainly because I don't think it fits at all with the rest of the project. As far as the planters, I guess it makes sense having a climbing vine on the backside, but again, with planting, it's kind of tough to say what that's going to look like. The problem with any kind of a living wall is it could look great and it could look horrible. I mean, it's tough to see. Usually, you're not asked to do a design approval for a climbing vine. So again, I have a hard time doing that one also. So I'm just stuck on this project.
And I think that for the board, the reason why the landscape came back is because there wasn't a landscape architect on board originally. So I think it was the intent was just to make sure that we got something to come back.
I understand why it was done.
I just want to make sure. Okay.
Hi. Yeah, I think I sort of struggle in a similar way, not knowing what the rest of the building is doing. At the moment, the way that it's been presented to us, it seems like this whole building is this beige and white color, and I'm a little struggling with why this wall is not those colors. It's a gray color, and maybe it would make sense if I knew more about the rest of the building, but even just the change in color is confusing, and I also would agree that in terms of the level of detail that you are presenting here, I don't know that it's really working with the rest of the partie of the building. The building currently has, the facade is, and it's a little hard to say with this render how much of the facade you're keeping, but assuming you are keeping it, there's sort of expanses, and then there's these little moments of really high detail, and I think maybe a similar partie, it doesn't need to be exactly that, would help break down the scale of that wall. The wall is still reading very massive because your moves are very massive. Your diagonals are crossing the entire mass of that wall, and so I don't know that sorry, I say I don't know. I do know your design is not breaking down that scale in a way that is beneficial, or I think in with the intent of what I think when they talk about exterior building materials, colors, and craftsmanship, it sounds like they're going for something that is more in tune with the context, and I don't think that this is doing that for you. It's true, at the moment, it's a struggle, because I wish I knew more about the project so that I could kind of understand why some of these moves are being made. At the moment, it seems very out of the blue, and it also seems inappropriate for the location. So until I have more information, I don't think I can put my support with this design.
Any comments on landscape?
I don't, truthfully. I see where it's happening on the ground floor. It's a little hard to understand how that's going to affect the rest of the structure. So I'll refrain from discussing the landscape. I appreciate that there are planners there, and that's really great, but it's hard to say how it's going to enhance the building the way that it is currently represented.
Okay, great, thank you. So on this particular one, I guess I struggled with it not seeing the full set of plans for this, just to see how the building has changed since the council looked at it. I was actually, in a way, more supportive of the pattern on the south facade. I think I agree. It's like it's different than the rest of it's different than the context. It's not what I was thinking of during in the past reviews of the building, but I think that I can accept it. I think I agree with my colleagues about scale. I think there is something. I think there is something there, but I think I would have to see it like in with the context in there to actually see how much of it you would see from the street. On the planters, I think my general recommendation for planters is to use whatever plant looks good for a long period of time, and that may not, in many cases, that's not native plants. There are a couple issues with the native plants. One is a lot of them have a dormant period in the summer where they don't like any summer water, and then the other issue is that one is that they don't look good, and then two is that if it's in a planter and it's getting watered every day, that they can actually develop disease and die prematurely. They're not necessarily adapted to that particular to living in planters. But that being said, I don't have any particular issues with the plants that are being proposed. With regard to the colors, I think the thing that was confusing me on the colors is that my recollection is that Joe Bellomo had proposed like up on the third floor. I thought he had proposed like was it 3-form? Like a plastic, it's a polycarbonate plastic panel up there, and he had used it on one of the houses in downtown North. And then I've lost track of what happened on the materials in any subsequent hearing. So I'm not actually sure what's happening up on the 3rd and 4th floor. I was wondering if you could explain that, please, Mr. Coe.
Yeah, I have a model, what's 3D model here. If you want to look, that's a lot of wall facing on the 3rd floor. Has concrete was proposed. And then the back wall is just stucco facing the west side. But the 3rd floor, because it's residential, so there's openings on the bedrooms just for the window, one large sliding door. The rest part of it would be concrete wall. And that's the 3rd floor. Yeah, the 3rd level. Yeah, there's a lot of
3rd floor concrete. Okay.
Yeah, so because the 1st and 2nd floor, 1st and 2nd floor is the retail, and the 2nd floor will be office. We consider as a commercial use, and the upper level, 3rd floor and 4th floor is office, is way set back, but the 3rd floor has a lot of walls, just the same color as the west wall with the grayish color. That was the same color, so it will carry the color all around.
And on the 3rd floor, concrete?
Yes.
Is that precast or is that cast in place?
It's a cast in place concrete.
Got it.
Yeah,
and it's colored.
That's exactly, yeah.
So it's dark.
Yeah, all the walls back on the rear, see in the model on the west side, will be stucco finish, and then there will be the same color wrap around. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, again, the wall facing University and also Kipling and the alley, they all be the same color and then the same texture. We're trying to match to the concrete wall back there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That helps.
Thank you.
So
okay.
would the board like a minute to study the model?
No, I think I understand I think I've got it. And I think I can make I think I can recommend which is the 3rd item, which is for the exterior building materials. I'm fine with that. I'm also fine with the landscape design details and planting. And then, I think it leaves us, at least for me, is the 1st item, which is the decorative wall treatment. So I think the other board members are opposed to it, and so I'm not opposed to revisiting that item.
I have a question then. On some of these, the arched or the openings here where you've got the dots on there, is those sort of exposed concrete that have the construction divots in it?
That's the tie for the concrete because they're put in place concrete.
No, I understand that, but I mean, you've got the little dots on here, which is fairly traditional for when you pull off, the shoring, that you've got the little divots in there. Is that what's going to these are going to have?
There are tie knots, and that the building will look, the concrete will be very similar.
So this will be exposed concrete
to the building at 102 University Avenue.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, could you please just identify yourself for a transcript,
sure.
please? Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Wong, and I don't know what to call myself, the manager for the owners of the building. It's not just me and several people. And I'll be happy to answer any question you may have. I think that I think that the west wall is a personal preference. I think they're all, if you have 10 people will come up with a different design. And we're just in the process, at the very late stage of getting this process, the building permits. So it's not like, we have a year to make some changes to this. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Wong. Okay, so let's bring it back to the board. What do you want to do with the west wall? Or is it south wall?
I was going to talk about the planter on the side that I'm looking at right now. Yeah.
There's one similar on University Avenue.
Oh, is that right? Is it a similar scale in terms of how much concrete to planter to concrete?
This one might be tall. This one might be a little taller, but it's high.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the model, it seems quite massive. It seems like a little overbearing, and if the planter were not there, that would be absolutely quite terrifying, just to have this big concrete wall on that side. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that particular part. Going back to the west wall, I think also the model is it's really helpful. I'm actually really glad you guys brought that. I think it still doesn't answer my question, though, about how it relates to the rest of the building. It's true that there is a subjective part, but there is also something that is appropriate, and there's nothing else in this building that does that in any way, even in the parties. Some of the walls look like maybe they tilt out, like the concrete walls tilt out, but I can't see how that pattern relates in any way to the building. So I'm not ready to approve this project as it is right now.
Hello, my name is Laura Roberts. I'm with Co-Architects, and I would like to answer your question on how we approach the design for that back wall.
So I would just like to confirm that we have closed the public hearing. And so, Chair, if we do want to answer, could we please relay that?
Yes. I'm interested in the design idea.
Okay. So we feel that this design not just relates to the project, it relates to the entire city of Palo Alto. We think this as an abstract representation of what a tree is, and we're trying to mimic this in a mural, and that's the only opportunity in this project where we have a big plank wall to do a mural, where all around the town you can see a lot of these fixtures. So we felt that these chevrons, as you're calling it, for us are more like branches of a tree, and it was an abstract representation of that. In terms of materials, Peter already described a little bit of what the intention is for the coloring and that. So I just wanted to say something related to how we approach that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I respond? Yeah, thank you for that. If that is the case, I would say that I think that's a really great concept to think about trees and abstracting them on your wall. I don't know that that's the best way to go about it. I think that I think in that concept itself, there are many ways to do that, and something that is more detailed and finer grain and even, what's the word, with a bit more layering, I think, would give it that complexity that I think trees have. So I think the design intent is good. I don't think you've accomplished it in this particular instance.
I'm reading a book about how humans relate to nature, and one of the theories is that with trees is that it's fractal geometry, and that we can actually see that, like we perceive that, like we know about the complexity and the layering of the different branches. And so, like with trees, if you have like very tiny little twigs, they're in the same geometry as the larger branches. And I think Leonardo da Vinci had a theory that like the area in the main trunk is equal to the layers. If you took a cross-section of the tree up at higher levels, it would all add up. That was his theory. It's not completely true. But there is something to it. Okay, so will either of you make a recommendation on or make a motion for this? Because I think you guys are not on board with the west wall at least, and then you have questions on the some questions on the planters.
I move that we continue this project to a date uncertain.
And would you try to maybe elaborate on your thinking on the west wall, just to give them guidance?
Yeah.
I think you've done it, but
I think revision to the design on the west wall, something that does have a bit more detail, more layering, something that is more true with your design intent would I think make a difference. And then also to provide more documentation of how this looks on the street, how it relates to the context, how it relates to the rest of the building. I think that would help you guys convince us that this is appropriate. And I would say the same thing with regard to the planters, and especially the planter on lane 30, and that garden wall. Just a bit more understanding of the choices of those plants and how those will behave over time and through the seasons, given that that is a big swath of wall that, if the plants were to fail, would be very large.
I have one suggestion based on that. If we also have to determine craftsmanship, we should see some either construction details or something to see what the craftsmanship is, rather than just a couple of lines on a piece of paper.
Do we want
so
to?
why don't we? I think the process would be, if we're going to follow the Robert's Rules of Order, maybe second it and then propose an amendment.
Okay, I'll second it, and then that's my amendment.
Well, I accept that.
We have a motion to continue the date to a date uncertain by Board Member Thompson, seconded by Guyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Yes, you are allowed, I think you're allowed a closing comment, maybe? I don't know.
Okay, so Elizabeth Wong again. And I would, this is a very late stage, and we don't have the time. So I would probably ask the city to approve the project with a deferment on these three issues. And I would very much like to have it to come in as a subcommittee, because these issues are things that they take a lot of time, instead of just a presentation. And then we could have 2 or 3 members of the board working with us, because we are flexible in accommodating some of these things. And, so it is not the typical 3 or 4 ARB meetings that we are going through. So, as I said, I think that this project is almost ready for building permits. And as such, I would request that the city defer these 3 issues. And these 3 issues, I would very much like to work with the ARB, because people have different ideas of what they would like, and we're trying to please the ARB. The other point I want to make is that the west wall will eventually be built up. The building next door will be built up, and it will cover it. So any sort of layering would be probably not feasible. And the other thing is that this building is built to every inch, is designed to every inch. So there are things that, we like to accommodate you, but we would like to have like a subcommittee to work together on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Jody, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm, the items that we're speaking about today that we just made a motion on, they are somewhat, important details to the building, but they are details. And so we will work with the applicant to see how we can, somehow help them with the timing of the project. If there are, parts of a building permit that we can release or something of that nature, we will see what we can do there. But I think the board has made a motion to continue this to a date uncertain, and we will follow that.
And from my point of view, if we do, the board's made this motion. If the planning director prefers to have it go to subcommittee, I'm not opposed to that. We have 2 board members who are going to be recused on this project anyway, so it's just the difference between 2 people and 3 people on the board reviewing anything that comes back. So it seems to me it's fairly straightforward. Well, because she wrote a letter to the newspaper regarding this item previously, and she was not even, I think, on the board at the time.
I don't think we have any true legally required recusals, but we do, have some people that made some comments or worked on the project, things of that nature. So they've, out of the abundance of caution, they have recused themselves.
Okay, thank you. We'll see what the planning director recommends on this particular project. So thank you, guys. Good luck with your project. Okay, so I think that concludes our meeting. We're not going to review the minutes today because we didn't receive them, and we don't have anything on the subcommittee items. So thank you.